My friends, in the event that you are new to this wonderful card game and you have not yet signed up for a UGN Play account, you can now sign up with my exclusive referral code Alliteration and get yourself 50 bonus loyalty points for free. For free, as well as additional loyalty points for every event that you play in within my referral code period. Why do you need these, you might ask? Well, loyalty points can be used to redeem free promotional cards in the mail, as well as other exclusive items coming in the future. The bonus points from using my code are enough to redeem almost any promo card right off the bat, and having your UGN account is going to allow you to accrue and track more and more as you go through your hero or villain's journey. If free cards and progression all sound super appealing to you, the links for all of this are going to be in the description below. Now, let's get on to the video. Welcome, my dear viewers, to another Alliteration gaming video. I'm Levi as always, and today we're going to be doing another little bit of a Nationals meta recap. This past weekend, the online Pro Hero National event fired off, and it was almost as explosive and interesting as the in-person one. It was a little bit smaller. I think this one came in at around, 266 people, I want to say, something in that ballpark, so a little less, but either way, there is still a lot of data to go over and a lot of proven theory to check out. So first of all, looking at the pie chart, it's pretty similar with a few notable changes. A little bit less Kirishimas, almost the same number of Tokoyamis. I didn't really expect these two numbers to look any different whatsoever. If anything, I expected like a little more Tokoyamis and a little less Kirishimas. Instead, we only got a little less Kirishimas. If anything, I think that just says that people are realizing he's not necessarily the best deck in the world. He's just the best free deck in the world. He's kind of like the golden tickets to top cuts. Performing with him past that though is when like it starts to take into account a lot more of your player's skill, and the opponent's deck might just be flat out better than yours in some ways. Either way though, he's still very much the logical choice, but if you want to play the real best deck in the room, yeah, Tokoyami had almost the exact same number of players as last time. Considering this is a smaller event, him having the same amount as the 300 person event, if it really can be constituted as an increase in players if you really want to think about it that way. Either way, it does make sense whether he increased or stayed the same, because he won Dallas, and I think really proved himself as like the definitive strongest deck in the field right now, and so I think a lot more people are going to be flying towards him. After that, another kind of big new outlier was 20 Ojiro 2. He had I think 13 on the last pie chart, so this is a significant increase, especially becoming a significantly smaller event as well. Ojiro 2 I think was one of those characters that people were either sleeping on or thought was like the most insane deck in the world, and I think that graph just kind of evened itself out a lot after Dallas. A lot of people woke up to him, a lot of people realized that he's not the strongest, but he is still very strong. Either of those reactions could gravitate you towards playing him. After that, the Jiros make sense, the Ochakos, Erasers, Midnights, Asuis, Monetas, etc. make sense. There's one guy on here who is quite a curveball, and that's Midoriya 2. A lot of people took Midoriya 2 to this event. Being 5th overall in the pie chart is pretty impressive. I mean, considering this is a big Nationals level event, one of the last chances for anyone in the world to make their way into Worlds is pretty significant. So unfortunately, he didn't really see any conversion rate whatsoever, which is pretty sad. I do think he's a pretty respectable deck, and I think you should be a little bit aware of them because he can kind of just kill you out of nowhere sometimes. Aside from that, I think everyone is more or less accounted for here. I think the only real character missing that's noteworthy is Ochako 1. Now, I don't think Ochako 1 is necessarily one of like the most meta decks in the world. However, it is worth noting because she got 2 places into the top 32 on 2 different symbols, I might add. So to be one of the small handful with more than one copy of your character in the top 32 cut and not be on the pie chart at all is, I think, pretty impressive. Now, moving on to the said top 32 cut is where we're going to see the real changes after Dallas. I mean, we have 11 Kirishimas, which makes sense. I think we had 16. He was exactly half of top 32 last time, so still a really sizable chunk in here. 2 Jiros is also exactly what we had in Dallas. Then the real big change here is 6 Tokoyamis. He had 2 last time as opposed to the 6 this time, which is really interesting because we had almost the exact same number of Tokoyamis in the field, 28 last time, 27 this time, yet 2 made it last time and 6 made it this time. So did the Tokoyami players just get good? Did they just get better? I think if anything, it's more a result of a lot of the best players in the field seeing just how strong Tokoyami was after Dallas and adopting him for this event, and then thus performing with him, showing that even though Tokoyami is probably the best deck to play, he still has room for skill input. So if you're a really good player, you're going to be able to push him just a little bit over the rest of the field. And then everything else is pretty cookie cutter. A couple Asuis, we got Ochako 2, Mineta 2, a couple Ojiro 2s. We got the Resident Sleepers, we got the 2 Midnights, we got the 1 Kamui. We have a Nomu and an All Might 3, which is super interesting, but I know that both of those people are like kind of specialists on those characters, so this is not too surprising. Kirishima remains a very strong grip on the format and what decks you can play as a whole, and Tokoyami proves himself to be the strongest contender to make that champion spot his. And then the rest of the field is just kind of lined out by a lot of really solid aggro decks. I think we're in an extremely aggressive format right now. Turn 2 is the name of the game. As Tam and I were commentators of the entire event over the weekend, I don't think I have enough fingers to count how many turn 2 kills we saw across the entire stream, and that's just in the stream games. We're in a really aggressive format right now. Unless your character can exhibit an overwhelmingly powerful defensive hold on all of the best aggro decks in the game, I think aggro is really just the way to go here. There's not a lot of room for like wall or control styles unless you are just simply the best of the best with them, such as like Momo or even Eraserhead, if you have the confidence and the skill set to pilot that character perfectly. And I think that's kind of the big thing too, is a lot of these aggro decks are, not only are they significantly stronger, they have a lot more leeway for failure. Their decision making trees are not as difficult as some of the defensive and control decks, and it's a lot easier to make a couple mistakes, right? But most of the time, if you're playing Eraserhead, you can't make one mistake. That's the game. Momo, you can maybe make like 2, possibly 3 mistakes, depending on how much leeway the game state is giving you. So I think those are also significant factors to consider when you're looking at the overwhelmingly aggressive nature of these pie charts and these top cuts. And then if you look at the top 8 spread overall, it very much makes sense. We've got 2 Asuis, we've got 2 Kirishimas, 2 Tokoyamis, and then a Jiro and an Ojiro. It's actually almost exactly the same as Dallas. I think we've just traded a 3rd Kirishima for a 2nd Asui, and then our 1 of Momo traded itself for a 1 of Ojiro. Either way, still I think a very good representation of what the best decks in the field are, and then a ton of notable names here as well. So it kind of just goes to show that when you pair some of the best people in the field with some of the best decks in the field, you're going to get a very definitive top cut. I think everyone agrees that like Kirishima, Tokoyami, and Asui are very solved. Ojiro popping up in here makes a lot of sense. I mean, he had a decent conversion rate overall with so many in the field, and then the deck is just absolutely very powerful. To see an Ojiro in here, and he only eventually lost out to the guy who won the whole event, Jose. And then, I mean, you got Jacob Johnson on Jiro. Man, if you thought losing on Wavering Slash and then only really gaining seasoning advantage from set 3 was not enough to turn the tide of Jiro back into the meta, man, you're sorely mistaken. This deck is still absolutely insane. Specialized Sound Waves is a hell of a card, and you've got to be aware of the crazy things that this deck can do. I'm just going to pull up the picture here of JJ's final board in his top 16 stream game. Man, if you know, you know. Alright, and let's finally bring the discussion over to the top 8 deck lists themselves. Starting from the ground up, we've got Cody Jacobitz on his Ojiro 2. First thing you'll notice is we got a lot of 0 difficulty foundations. It almost seems like that's kind of become a staple of the meta, man. The consistency in those guaranteed 4 builds is very strong, especially in all of these decks that are trying to turn 2 kill the opponent. Having that extra foundation like 9 times out of 10 is going to end up going a long way towards that game plan. We've got some really cool tech here. We've got the Manly Friendships, really good. The Fortune Surrender are great against Tokoyami's. The Male Bondings are really strong too. There was a game in his top cut stream match where he built 4, including like double Male Bonding, and then just said, yeah, attack me on turn 2. I'm gonna go into my turn 2 kill with 6 foundations. Other noteworthy pieces, there's 3 Learning the Standards in the main board with a 4th on the side. This is pretty massive, but again, it's such a powerful card against Tokoyami that I have to imagine that is the primary reason why this card's here. And it's also just really good against a lot of combo decks in general. Fantastic against Asui. Usually a card that's reserved more so for the sideboards, but given the meta that we're in and the decks you expect to see most of the day, I can't argue with these in the main board at all. And then the attacks are just a powerful assortment of punches. I think the real spicy thing here is the Missouri Smash is extremely cool. Watch them do some really crazy stuff with the Missouri Smash, like being able to go like play the Missouri Smash, hit with it, play another attack, then build a foundation because the effect lingers. That was like the most mind-blowing play to me. I thought that was one of the coolest things that I had seen all weekend. Overall, a very powerful character on probably the best symbol in the game right now. From what I heard, this man was just OTKing people on turn 2 literally all day, every day. If you lost the dice roll, it was basically just over. Moving on, we have our first Kirishima 2 in here. This is actually Nathan DeWalt pivoting from his beloved Momo in order to try and secure his ticket to Worlds, and it looks like it paid off. And if you're looking at this list, it's pretty simple. similar. A lot of good earth things going on in here. We got the apathetics, the new training methods. Notably, the one with natures are absent, opting to go for something like the talented baker instead. Only 1 speed rather than the +2 speed you get with one with nature, but it's free the second you start using your Kirishima. So I definitely understand that. I think one with nature is a very, very powerful card, but I think this is probably the deck it's like the least staple in, especially since you just got so much more speed overall. And as long as you're replacing it with the talented baker, so you do have some speed pump from that slot regardless, I think it's perfectly fine. Other than that, we've got the shock absorptions is some interesting tech. The celebrity status is cool tech as well. 3 petty squabble is a lot, but I mean, hey, we dig for those kill turns. We dig for those kill turns. The prehensile tail is something that I think a lot of the Kirishimas have adopted now as a really, really, really good deadlock threat. And then the attacks, the main noteworthy thing I think is the brutish swagger, but I do think that attack is pretty strong in there. And if you're building a slightly bigger Kirishima deck, it can absolutely make the cut. And then our sideboard is just really traditional stuff. We saw the internship with Best Genist a lot in Dallas on the sideboard, and then the obvious is the learning the standards and the force and surrenders are just the good things against Tokoyami and Asui. Moving on, we have our first Asui here. We got Cody Aguilar also pivoting from his Eraserhead. He did play it in Dallas, did not see the results he wanted, so it's time to get on the frog and secure that Worlds ticket, and we most certainly did. And this is some pretty standard water Asui stuff. We have all of the great speed reduction, all of, again, a huge chunk of zeros, all of the good defensive water staples. We got the irrefutables, the wall clings, graceful maneuvers, exclamation and dry eyes, the big pieces for water Asui coming from the Eraser deck. The recovery times I think are pretty interesting stuff, but we did see them have some significant use overall throughout the entirety of the tournament. Really good against like the big throw decks, really good against the discard deck. And then our sideboard is pretty typical stuff. We've got all of our Faith Shields in the sideboard. The meta doesn't really call for throws very much, so I can understand it. The rest of the recovery times for those discard decks, Stadium for those other Faith Shield decks or those breaker decks, and then we've got a little bit of a Toru package. Toru 2 and 2 copies of her Invisible Infiltration Ultra Rare in here also make a ton of sense. Toru 2 is an incredibly powerful side. She has kind of been heralded as the Tokoyami killer. While I don't think she is that by any stretch of the word, she is still a powerful side against him and makes him have to play the game a little bit differently. And if you are stronger in a longer game scenario against Tokoyami, it is a very powerful side. Hats off to Corey, this is a sick list. Moving on to Ben Lambright's Kirishima 2 list. This is also on the Earth symbol, as they all were, and we're kind of seeing like a bit of a middle ground maybe between him and Nathan's list. We've got a little less apathetics, so we've got a little less petty squabbles, we've got some more tech pieces here and there, we've got the 2 learning the standards between main and the 3rd inside, we have a 2-2 split between the talented baker and the one with nature, still a pretty teched out foundation base. And as far as the attacks, the hardened frenzies and the high engine kicks are big players here. I really love high engine kick, even in not like a kick focused build. I think this attack is really sweet, and the speed it provides combined with all of the damage we can put on it is really crazy. Like, it's normally like an 8 high for 4, but when an homage comes in, when a Kirishima +2 comes in, when a one with nature discard comes in, it can easily become like a 10 high for 7, 8, 9 really quickly. And then our sideboard is just teched out to heck and back. 2 you're so obvious for those big stat decks. We got the other 2 apathetics. We've got 2 Faith Shields, only 2 globally. Very cool teched out Kirishima 2 list right here. Now moving into the top 4, we've got Jacob Johnson's Air Giro list, and this is actually 1 card different from Tim Keefe's list from Dallas. Jacob elected to move a 3rd Jolt into a 2nd Pillar Swing slot. Otherwise, it is the exact same main deck. Regardless though, it's very good Giro stuff. We got a lot of fantastic zeros. Air 0 difficulty lineup is off the charts. We've got the nice shock treatment tech, the nice wealthy aspirations tech, the nice dexterous appendages tech, some really cool pieces here and there. And then our attack lineup moves into the Pillar Swings like last time to replace the loss of the Unwaverings as a charge weapon with a low block. And then we're just teching in things like the electric jolts and the amplified sound blast to give us a little bit more flow and control over our opponent's board. And then our sideboard, I actually think we have a little bit of a Jasko Air here, because our sideboard here definitely has 12 cards. I think they just listed the 2 encouraging training partners twice. I think there's only 2 in the actual sideboard, but again, we've got the training partners to reset Tokoyami's big moves. We've got the cheerleaders to flash his moves so they can't get big. We've got the Toru 2 side, which is again incredible against him and a lot of the other meta decks right now. And then just some more 1.3s and stat resets. Confuses a little bit of a throw hate. Man, this deck slaps. Continuing through the top 4, we've got Brandon Jones as the 2nd Asui, and this is very similar to Corey's list, simply just a lot more. We've got a lot more tech pieces here and there. We've got things like Observant Student, we've got more zeros with the Desperate Times, we've got the Frozens, we've got the one of Self Assured, Faith Shields in the main, first villain encounters, rescue completeds, just overall a much thicker and teched out list, packing a lot of answers for things. Relatively similar attack lineups, though the Freezer Burns coming in really big here and the frog kicks. Opting to play those moves over things like Crow and Frog is pretty interesting, but although I can't deny the power of Freezer Burn. Freezer Burn is like one of the coolest attacks right now, and its application against the Face Shield decks is really strong, being able to cancel that out, ensure that you can get your first couple moves going forward in a very, very similar vein as Crow and Frog does, right? Because it can't get face shielded. So a lot more utility in the attack lineup as well, and then the rest is just your staple water defensive packages, your tapes, your ice glidings, your struggling with studies, your graceful maneuvers, just so many ways to not die, and then all your powerful new eraser head starter deck cards. The sideboard pretty much just lets us pack a couple more copies in of a lot of our tech slots. We've got some creepies in there as well. The stadiums for our rivals' own Faith Shield decks, plus Ultra is a nice emergency button. The class lineup in here is really funny because Brandon has confirmed that he definitely misread the card, didn't realize that it had a set 3 only, a set 3 character only enhance on it. So that is definitely not going to be in there in the future. Really funny piece of lore behind this list. And then moving into our final two, we're going to be seeing double here quite a lot here. Our finals match was Tokoyami versus Tokoyami, both on the Chaos symbol. First, we're going to look at the contender list from Andrew Bowling. This one going all the way with the 15 zero difficulty foundations, the strugglings, the chivalrous, all of the really good Chaos foundation base. 3 irrefutables. People starting to realize how powerful Crow and Frog and irrefutable is in interacting with your opponent's board. It's moving all the way up there in copies. I like the one of Self-Assured a lot. Our one with Nature's coming in. Only real thing missing here is 0 copies of Petty Squabble, which I think is kind of insane to not be playing in Chaos Tokoyami right now. It's possible that he didn't have these. It is a promo card. It is a plus ultra pack promo, as I think people have really started to identify it as one of the most powerful interactions that Tokoyami can be doing right now. And the attack lineup is the Frozen Slash is kind of like our big thing here. The rest is pretty staple stuff. Our Azures, Ice Storms, Heatwave, Ruins, Crow and Frogs, etc, etc. The Frozen Slash is a really cool piece here. I love this attack. I think you either play like this or then you play like Jolts or Indiscriminates, depending on which way you want to go. I love the Frozen Slash though as a way to pass on massive stats. It's a super scary card and does pack a really relevant deadlock if you ever get there. And then our sideboard lets us bring in things like Encouraging Training Partner to interact with our opponent's big old moves, a couple more tech pieces, recovery times, I guess, for those discard decks or those really hard to block decks, and then just more breaker in the sideboard. Really good stuff, Andrew. I'm looking forward to seeing you playing at Worlds at full power when you can't disconnect. And then finally, all the way at the end, we have Jose Norono, our champion of the Webcam Nationals, on his own Chaos Tokoyami list, looking pretty similar as they all do. Notably, we've got some Encouraging Training Partners in the main. I think that's a heads up tactic if you think you're going to be playing the mirror match all day, every day. Big zero difficulty foundation counts. We've got all of our Petty Squabbles lined up. Only 2 Twisting Azure Infernos, opting to instead pack a couple of Freezer Burns in here as well. The 1.3s in here as well as a nice alternative bomb. Our one with Nature's are irrefutables at massive copies, big parts of our aggressive game plan. Only 2 Twisting Azure Inferno is really interesting. People have kind of hyped that up as one of like the strongest, most insane cards Tokoyami can be playing right now. But if you look back at Barrett's winning list from Dallas, he also only played 2, and they have both shared their logic on that in spades. And then of course our sideboard is again just more of our defensive tech pieces and bringing in emergency answers like Jolts for control over the opponent's board, and then plus Ultras and Ice Storms as emergency safety net blocks. And that, guys, is going to wrap up our meta roundup for this online nationals. Big congratulations to everyone involved, and then really big congratulations from top 32 onwards, and especially awesome performances by those beautiful top 8 players who have all secured their tickets to Worlds. It was great fun watching and commentating over your games with Tamron. You guys gave us an exhilarating weekend of matches, and I'm excited to see the caliber just go up and up from here. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, a big thank you to you as well. And if you want to leave me some feedback, the comment section and like and dislike buttons are right down there if you've got a second to spare. And if you want to spare way more of your seconds on more of my stuff, the subscribe button is going to allow me to shove all my MHA CCG content into your newsfeed. We're talking gameplay videos, deck profiles, tier lists, all kinds of meta discussions like these, and more content to churn out. There's so much in the game to talk about right now. The support has been amazing. We're ramping up into probably the most hype era of the game so far as our busiest competitive season continues to grow, eventually culminating into the Worlds event, which is going to be the most hype thing that the game has encountered thus far. And there's just going to be no shortage of coverage on the channel for it, so if you want to be a part of all that, I would super appreciate your support in the form of a subscription. We absolutely blew through the 900 subscriber mark throughout the release of Heroes Clash up until right now, and I think the road to 1000 is going to be so much fun as we cover all these amazing events and you guys keep giving me your amazing support. I'm going to try and put out amazing content worthy of it. That's all the time I've got for today though, guys. Thanks again for watching, and I hope I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.